you mentioned that you have the ability to kind of camouflage because you're part white. You have the ability to camouflage. And then you look at someone like me, and I don't get that. I don't get that luxury. But I do get that luxury in one way. And it came in the form of trying to apply for a job here. There was a call center in town, and I tried to apply for a job here. And you can all hear me, and you all hear exactly how I talk. And this has been a bone of contention my entire life. I have always been told that I'm not actually black simply because I don't cuss all the time. I don't talk with colloquials all the time. I'm not big on slang. It's just not my thing. I've always been a proper English person. I don't know why. It's always been that way with me. And so, and even that in and of itself, that microaggression drives me insane because, proper English is only reserved for white folk, right? That's just the way that goes. But I digress. So I went and I applied for this job, and it was you call in and you talk to the person and they say, okay, hey, who are you? Da 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 da. And they talk to you on the phone, and then they say, okay, we'll give you an interview in person if we like how you talk on the phone. So my name, it's Mark Millington. It's an English last name. I definitely 100% sound white on the phone. So totally got through the interview process, totally fine. Went and I sat down in this office to wait for my interview with like 7 or 8 other people. And this was when I had first moved to this town. This is when I first moved to Sault Ste. Marie. So we're talking like 16 years ago, something like that. So I'm sitting there in this office, and one guy is sitting beside me, tattooed up, and he's talking with me, and me and him are having a great old time. Just, he's like, oh, where are you from? And what makes you come to the city? And we're totally having a great conversation while the rest of the people are all going in and out and getting their interviews. And I end up being the last person in the room. And the woman comes out, looks right at me, looks around the room, and starts to walk away. And I'm like, I'm here for an interview. And she's like, oh, I was looking for Mark Millington. And I'm like, I am Mark Millington. And she just sort of like her jaw hit the floor. Like, there's no way this is the person I was talking to on the phone. And I get in there and suddenly it's, do you have a criminal history? And where are you from? And I'm like, these are not exactly normal interview questions, but we'll play along because I would really like to have a job. I apply at the same place. I'm not going to name any names because I'm not in the game of shaming people, but I applied at that place 3 separate times. And every single time I applied with 3 different recruiters, 3 different interviewers, and every single time reached the exact same point. I walked into the office, I sat down for that interview, and they looked at me like I shouldn't have been there. And it's wild to me that when you have that ability to camouflage, it's nice in some ways, but it really doesn't help me any. It really, really doesn't help me any. And it's super frustrating. It's super frustrating to have people look at me and grade my blackness based on the stereotypes. They tell me that I'm not black enough because I don't like this kind of music or I don't do this kind of activity. Like, because I'm not sitting in my basement or sitting with a bunch of boys in my house playing NBA 2K and smoking a bunch of weed, I'm suddenly not black enough, right? Like my card gets revoked because I'm not doing the stereotypical things, when in actuality, I really don't want to do the stereotypical things. I would like to break those molds and show people that there are varying shades of blackness. There are varying degrees of blackness. You don't necessarily have to be like fresh off the boat from Africa black in order to be considered black. I don't need to dress in traditional Nigerian gear to be considered black. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a thing. So I kind of envy people like you who kind of have that ability to camouflage when you want to and take a break and not have to deal with it in a way. Do you know what I mean? It's all still there. It's all still compartmentalized within you. And I understand that. So I'm not taking away from your experience at all. I'm not saying that you are any less native, but the ability to camouflage when you're out in society and not have to deal with that stigma every once in a while, it can't be beat sometimes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like, honestly, getting interviews and jobs has been hard for me because my name is Skyly Storm. It's hyphenated. People don't know what that is. I get weird questions all the time about who my parents were, if they were hippies, like what? And then it's just like, No, like it's my mom did come up with that name, but like it's based off of names that like were suggested when I was conceived, like stuff like that. Like it is traditional in some ways, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like I deal with a lot because there are different degrees of nativeness, different degrees of Indianness. Um, like you know, like I technically have status, um, but then there are people who are darker than me who don't. There are people, yeah, exactly, Cece. So like, I mean, I deal with folks, you know, who are from Métis organizations who are friends of mine who like applied to get a membership card with a number on it where I have to explain to them my number. Every digit represents a generation of my family, a number that they were assigned instead of a name. So if you look back like 4 digits, that's my grandfather. You look back 6 digits, that's my great grandfather. Like we didn't get to just choose to have that. It wasn't like something that like we were like, oh, I want to be a part of this fun club. Like, no, no, no. Like it's something that's assigned to you at birth. Like you don't get a choice. Like it's something hard to describe to people. And then the other so the shitty thing about camouflage is that other white people confess to you the most disgusting views, the worst shit. Like they come up and say to you like stuff about other folks or like stuff about indigenous folks on the street, especially here in Ottawa. That actually really upsets me because it's just like, you know, I've had members of my dad's family who were street people, and it's just like, you know, I didn't know them personally, but I've had the stories given to me, and I've seen their photos, and I know who they are, and I know that like my grandfather had those moments as well, and it's just like it's incredibly sad. And to have other white people come up to me and be like, haha, guess what, and like say something awful and gross, and then I just sit there and I'm like, actually no, I'm gonna tell you right now why that is a big problem with me. Like you can't just come up to me and disclose that bullshit because I don't like it. And you know, and then I get kind of looked at as like, oh, you're sensitive. And it's like, really sensitive. And you know, it sucks too being in camouflage because like sometimes, you know, like I'm saying I'm looking for a new place and people say, what are you buying? And I'm like, fucking nothing. I can't, I'm looking to rent. Um, and then people look at you like, well, why are you paying someone else's mortgage? And it's like, well, I don't have the privilege of having like $40,000 lying around to put down on a house that I can't afford that'll take me 50 years to pay off. Like I just don't have that. And I'm thankful for at times I know like if there's going to be violence on the street or something, I know it's not going to be directed at me because of the way that I look, and that's like a certain degree of safety. But as soon as my loudmouth intervenes in something, I know that I'm in danger. um, and it's happened a few times here, like because Ottawa can be really nasty because we share a border with Quebec. My First Nations in Quebec, um, they aren't the best with us. They don't like us. Um, and I mean, it's got layers to it, and I 100% know what you mean because I've had friends who are quite dark, who also speak very white on the phone, and who have white names, like you know, like Chris or Jonathan, and it's just like you know, like people don't know what they are until they get there. Um, and it's a weird thing, but it's all like in relation to whiteness.
It
And it's
always is.
like and it's not necessarily like what you said. It's like I'm not calling out people who are white or like whatever because it's just like I get it. My mom's side of the family's from Newfoundland and they don't get treated very nicely in Toronto. Like people make fun of their accent. People always ask them where they're from. Like just bullshit like that. Like so I mean it does exist on both sides. They're not rich people. They've had to do factory work their whole lives and it's it's negatively affected their health and like all that other stuff. But I mean nobody questions their right to be here. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas, like, I have friends like Bushra, who was supposed to attend this conversation today, when we were in the Sioux during Canada 150, and her and I were speaking up against a lot of those narratives, people were telling her to go back where she came from. And she went to elementary school and high school in Mississauga just the same as I did. So, I mean, it's absolute garbage. Like, it's all in relation to the standard. You know what I mean? And it's like every time I've ever felt self-conscious, or I felt like I've looked in the mirror and felt disgust, it's always been in relation to one standard of what I feel I should look like or what I should be doing. And yeah, it's awful. I don't like it, but I also like sometimes it is nice to not automatically have that given to me. I mean,
I can see exactly. I never even really thought of it. I didn't think of it from that aspect. So for that, I apologize, because
you don't need to apologize. Like, I honestly don't face much nonsense in my life purely because of what I look like. So, I mean, you don't need to apologize.
It's wild though. You have to absorb both sides of it, and I think that's